Hello, welcome to week 3 of Social Justice and the Natural World. My name is Anastasia Mortimer. I'm going to give you a guest lecture today on key concepts of environmental justice. Just for some background information of me and who I was a former lecturer at Notre Dame on the Sydney campus, so some of you might recognise me. However, right now I am a researcher at the Centre for Western Sydney. I'm talking to you today about these concepts because my research background and practice is based in environmental justice scholarship. I'm also an environmental justice advocate and activist. My research focuses on the intersection between human and environmental relations, specifically looking at how climate change impacts on human beings. So environmental justice theory is a theoretical approach I've applied throughout my research and practice, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about these concepts, as I'm sure many of you are interested in how environmental justice applies to our current environmental crises that we're seeing, and also generally the history of this form of activism. So firstly, I'm going to start off by talking to you today about the Anthropocene. So the first concept we're going to cover today is the Anthropocene. This might seem complex, so I'm going to talk through it in great detail, but essentially it is the current geological time period that we have entered into as a species. So in geology, in sciences in general, we see time throughout various different time scales. We had previously had the Holocene, which was the name given in the post-ice age or post-glacial geological approach of the past 10 to 12,000 years. However, scientists believe we have now entered the Anthropocene, which is the geological time span where human activities are becoming the dominant force shaping our planet and natural systems. So the Anthropocene suggests that we are a major geological force altering our landscapes, our ecosystems, and even our atmosphere, meaning that on a global scale, human activities surpass natural processes. Again, we hadn't previously seen such change. Often our natural systems control us as species. However, scientists believe that we have entered into the period of human domination and destruction over nature. We're going to talk about this in terms of its impact now, but we'll talk more about it in terms of what that means for social justice coming up. So, key features of the Anthropocene: think about how human beings have changed up to 50% of Earth's land surface area through deforestation. And that's on the process of industrialization, urbanization, and for agricultural expansion. All of these activities are to build humanity, to contribute to development. However, that comes at a cost. And so we've seen widespread species extinctions at rates that go beyond the natural background rate. For example, 1,000 to 10,000 times what we have seen in previous iterations of time. Human created pollutants such as forever chemicals have led to a variety of environmental crises, including contributing to ozone depletion. We've seen human population growth at an unprecedented rate over the last 3 centuries, and that has led to increased urbanization, which has again surpassed previous centuries of growth. Our industrial outputs have skyrocketed. We've seen increased energy consumption dramatically, and this is predominantly in Western industrialized nations who have strong capitalistic systems and also strong economies, as well as strong industries. So again, this is where we'll bring in the justice element of it. It's not all people leading to industrial outputs. It's often the world's richest minority that impacts the majority of the world. So these have also led to atmospheric changes. So the burning of fossil fuels has driven up CO2 emissions. That's led to climate change. And we're seeing the impacts of climate change already, and we will continue to see those impacts grow as we move further and further along. So we've also seen, synthetic nitrogens for agriculture impacting water and leading to ecosystem imbalances. So all of these things are contributing to why scientists believe we live in the Anthropocene. So although we know that we live in the Anthropocene currently, there are some debates about when we can start to count shifts in time. This concept became widely acknowledged as the reality in which we live. Like I said, it became a part of mainstream conversation in around 2015. However, people believe that we actually entered the Anthropocene potentially during the Industrial Revolution, so around 1784, where we started to see the creation of steam engines and also widespread industrialization of various industries that would have been hobby related or are done at the community or household level, such as garment industries, manufacturing factories, etc. Others suggest that it was the mid-20th century was the start of the Anthropocene, where we saw the great acceleration or a rapid period of industrial growth, specifically in nations such as the US, that led to industrial growth and environmental change. The International Geological Congress has yet to formally recognise when this new approach started, so I wanted to highlight that as well. However, it is widely acknowledged that we are currently living in the Anthropocene. And a part of this conversation about the Anthropocene is about the human role in Earth's future. So we know that humans are accelerating environmental processes at an unprecedented rate. It's no longer natural. The things that we're seeing that are happening in the world are because of human interventions with nature. Therefore, there is the argument that it is up to humans to actually take responsibility to mitigate their impact on the planet. So understanding these changes is crucial for conversations of climate action and sustainable development, as well as social justice. So think about our relationship with nature and with other people on Earth, other people and also non-human species, and how our actions might be leading to change and destruction for some, and also in general when we think about the world of climate change. So these are just some of the questions we need to think about from a social justice perspective. And just to summarise, these are the Earth system trends that we're seeing that relate to the Anthropocene. So we're seeing increased carbon dioxide, increased nitrous oxide, increased surface temperature, ocean acidification. We're seeing marine fish capture increase. We're seeing tropical forest loss. We're seeing an increase in domesticated lands. All of these factors are what has led to widespread changes of our natural systems and also the impacts of climate change. So these are just some examples about why geologists and scientists in general see that we have entered this new time scale. Linking back now to the social justice elements of these changes, we need to think about what population growth means for human systems, of our human relations. Think about also what increased water use does to some. We're seeing water shortages across the globe where many people living in the global south or developing low socioeconomic nations experiencing the adverse consequences of this. So while we have abundance of water in countries like Australia, that comes at a cost for those around the world who do not have access to clean drinking water, to water in general. We're seeing widespread droughts across various nations, and these are all because of our overconsumption in Western industrialized nations. So these are just some of the socioeconomic trends we're seeing as a result of the Anthropocene. So again, I want you to think about what the Anthropocene means for social justice. So there's just a quote up on the screen, which I think summarizes this question very nicely. But think about how environmental changes might disproportionately affect marginalized communities. So the Anthropocene has not affected all people equally. Low-income communities, Indigenous groups, developing nations bear the brunt of environmental degradation. When we see rising sea levels as a result of climate change, we're going to see more extreme weather events, resource scarcity, and that is going to disproportionately harm those with fewer economic and political resources. We also know that there is a history of environmental racism, which we're going to be talking about shortly when we discuss environmental justice theory. So industrial waste, pollution, hazardous industries, etc., are often located in or near marginalised communities, and that leads to increasing the health disparities of already vulnerable population groups. Think about who has access to clean air, clean water, and an abundance of land. It's often those, again, living in industrialized, wealthy nations who are white as well, who have access to energy, clean air, water, where they don't even have to think about these effects of the Anthropocene impacting them. So this again reflects how environmental degradation is a part of broader patterns of social injustice. And then I also want to think about the idea of intergenerational justice and responsibility. So that's something that the Anthropocene makes us think critically about, because future generations will inherit the consequences of today's environmental destruction, as we're living currently with the environmental destruction of the Industrial Revolution. As we continue to grow our industries, as we continue to move away from climate action or sustainable development, we're going to see that we're going to have greater influence on people's lives into the future. So that's another question to consider, is what is our obligation for future generations to live on a livable planet? Again, we'll be discussing these questions in a bit more detail coming up, and also in the coming weeks when you think about the concept of intergenerational justice. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Jen can pass on my email address, or if you are interested in this topic, please read the linked sources on the next slide. Thank you.